So, welcome everyone. I can see almost 30 plus participants, and yeah, and so I believe there are both students and faculty listening to this webinar. So the title is Artistry for Analog Design: Present Day Challenges and Future Opportunities. I also would like to extend my thanks to Mahaguru Institute of Technology, especially the Department of ECE and EEE, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my learnings to you. As you all know, the time is from 1:30 to 3:30 on the afternoon session. I don't know how far you'll be able to concentrate. So what I have done is I have divided the entire session into 4 segments. So I'll be taking one segment. The first segment will be only for 15 minutes, and then I will take a very short break. Then we'll go for the second session with another 20 minutes. Then I'll give a short break, and then we'll go for the third, and then lastly the fourth. So what I have planned is I would like to start from science and engineering, electrical engineering, electronics engineering, coming to VLSA and related stuff, and bringing analog design to you. Then from there, we will also see the process, or what is analog IC design process. Later, I'll take you to the basics of analog design. We'll do a small design example. We'll see the simulation, and then we'll come back and talk about the challenges and opportunities. All right. So this is my plan. And one more thing, what I want to tell is, I request all of you to be interactive in the session. So soon after every segment, we definitely can take questions and we can have interaction. What I think is, here 2 hours നിങ്ങൾ spend ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ it should add some value to whatever, it should add some value to the knowledge what you have. Right. I also request other participants to keep in mute because I can hear some echo. Register a webinar എഴുതിയിരിക്കുന്ന ആ ഒരു ലോഗിൻ മ്യൂട്ട് അല്ലാന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു. I can hear some noise from that side. Hello, Preji sir.
Sir.
Yeah, sir. A webinar എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ആ ലോഗിൻ ഒന്ന് മ്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്യാം. അതിനകത്ത് നോയ്സ് വരുന്നു.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you so much. So I'm Dr. Nitin M. I'm working in RV College as assistant professor. So the next 15 minutes, we'll be giving a short glimpse on the discipline of electrical engineering, and we'll also see ECE and its various domains. Then we'll see why analog design, and we'll see what is analog design. And finally, at the end of this segment, we will see the relevance of analog design. So this is what I have planned for the first 15 minutes. So to start with, as I mentioned, the session can be very interactive. I would also request you guys to put messages in the chat. So I'll be looking at the messages in between. So the very first question what I have to you is, what do you understand, or what is the difference, what you feel between this engineering and science? So if you have any thoughts, you can put in the chat, so that I know you guys are listening to me. So what do you think is the difference between engineering and science? This is something which is very obvious, very, very clear. You all will be knowing, but I'm just asking. Can I get some response in the chat? What do you mean by, or what is the difference between engineering and science? All right, so you can please put your responses there. I'll be going ahead with this. So when you say science is basically describing and understanding the natural world, and the people who, engineering, Sony, thank you for that. Engineering is an application of science, calculation and hypothesis. Yes, thank you for the response. Yeah, so very basically what we can say is science is something which understands the natural world and describe the natural world, and people who does that, we call them as scientists. At the same time, engineering is, as Sonia responded, it is application of science, or it is basically calculation and hypothesis. So engineering is basically to give solutions to the problems what we see around, and we call the people who do that job as engineers. So I'm not telling this is the clear, very clear demarcation between science and engineering, but I want to bring you the importance of both science and engineering and how this go hand in hand. So how can I explain this difference of science and engineering? We all definitely would have learned about potential energy, right? Because we know when there is an object with a specific mass, and if it is kept at a specific height, we know that that object will have some potential energy, right? So that is the knowledge. So that is understanding about the natural world, or that is the basic knowledge what we have. And now, when someone use that knowledge and solve a specific problem, something like this. So if you keep a water tank at a specific height, it will have potential energy, and that water tank can definitely give or supply water to all the areas nearby, which is below the height of this water tank, right? So this is a specific application of a scientific knowledge what we have, right? So similarly, today most of you will be listening to me through your mobile phones, and definitely mobile phones also brings in a lot of scientific knowledge together. So in that sense, I can say engineering uses the scientific knowledge to create a particular technology. And today we all are enjoying the facilities. We all are enjoying a lot of technologies today, right? So this is basically the difference between engineering and science. Now, so coming to engineering, or how we have seen the engineering evolve. It all started from the Industrial Revolution, and I believe that this is also known to all of you guys. It starts with Industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0, and you can, you know that the major things happened is initially it was mechanical production. The revolution was that. Later it became mass production, and the third one became automated production. And there we could see that electronics and computers has come into picture. And today we talk about Industry 4.0, where we talk about artificial intelligence, big data, robotics, and many more stuff, right? So here I want to go back and tell you a brief background. So if you look at the engineering institutions, or the academia behind this engineering, especially when you look back, you can see that in most of the institutions you would have seen the parent branch is electrical engineering, and this electrical engineering branch will have many domains in this. So I'm just going to list you some of the domains here. So communication is one obvious clear domain. Then embedded systems we have instrumentation and control systems, photonics. We have signal processing, power systems and electronics, nanoelectronics, integrated circuits and systems, and so many domains under this parent branch of electrical engineering. And even today, many of the IITs and colleges use the name as electrical engineering even for electronics and communication department, because electronics and communication department has taken some of these domains, has actually formed a separate department. So the parent department is always electrical engineering, and in IITs you could see that it is also electrical and communication engineering. Right, so I am just narrowing down my discussion to analog, and so I am just narrowing down to electronics and communication engineering. That doesn't mean that this is not applicable to others. I'm just giving you the background of this. So when you come to electronics and communication engineering, the main you can divide the entire domains into four. One is VLSI design, where we talk about chips. Other one is signal processing, where we have algorithms and systems to process signals. Then we talk about communication. It is all about how you communicate, whether it is wired communication or wireless communication. And finally, we talk about embedded system, and we bring in everything into a big system. So these are the main branches what you can see in electronics and communication engineering. Right. I hope you would have, for the students who are listening to me, I'm very sure that the students of electronics and communication engineering branch would have definitely have some courses in all these domains, and depending on the semester what you are now, you would have learned the basics of these courses, right? Now, so again, I'm narrowing down to this VLSI design, and if you look at the VLSI design domain under ECE, under the parent branch of electrical engineering, I have listed only few here. There are many subdomains I can actually find in this. So it all starts with devices. So whenever you want to design a system, or when you want to work with a particular system, we need devices. So everything starts with the study of devices. So there is a separate branch, or there is a separate research domain where people people model new devices, people work with devices and understand the properties of that, so that that can be used for various other applications. Right. Similarly, you can see the other branch as IC design, and you can see that I have written 3 IC design things over here. One is analog and mixed signal, another one is RFIC design, another one is digital IC design. So, in the second segment, we will see the differences between all these IC designs. So, anyway, when we talk about IC design, the idea is to bring the devices together on a common substrate where we design chips or circuits, and that will be used for various applications in our life, day-to-day life. Apart from IC design, there is also something called as MEMS and NEMS, where we talk about micro electro or nano electromechanical systems. And one another important domain is testing and testability. So why testing and testability is important is because we talk about IC, we talk about transistors, a very, very small size. So we know that integrated circuits. So you definitely, as students, you would have visited labs and you would have seen ICs, integrated circuits. I don't know whether pandemic, how it affected you guys to reach a lab, but I assume that you would have seen some IC, and so you will see is that it has a package with a lot many pins outside, but you are not able to see the components inside, right? Because the reason is the components are very, very small, tiny in size. So now, when we want to integrate these components into a chip, and when we manufacture the chip, after manufacturing, if we want to know whether the IC is working properly, so these days we will also see that we include something called as inbuilt testing features into the IC. So the testing and testability domain talks or do much research on how you can actually have a built-in test in an IC, right? So I was talking about the various domains under VLSI. Now here I would stress again to something called as IC design, in that I'm going very specific to analog design. So before moving to the actual content of today's talk, today's session, I don't know how many of you had questions in your mind when you saw the brochure or the poster of this talk, because in today, 21st century, we are talking about analog design. Can you honestly respond in the chat box whether you had some thoughts, or why we need to listen about analog electronics or analog design? Honestly, if you have some thoughts, if it has come to your mind, please put in the chat box so that I'll know that what you are thinking about it. So now these are some of the questions which comes to everyone's mind. The questions are like this: why analog? So why I should study, or why I should read, or why I should understand about analog today? Or why should we be interested in designing an analog circuit? Or someone would have definitely heard this question: isn't analog design old and out of fashion? So now everything is digital. We are surrounded by digital devices, digital cameras, digital TVs, digital communication. But then why we are talking about analog? When one other question will be, will there be even jobs for analog designers? So I'm sure that at least by seeing the brochure or the poster of this talk, some of you had these kind of doubts. I don't know whether you had, but I would say that these questions, all these set of questions have been raised about every 5 years, and that is for the past 50 years. The past 50 years, and every 5 years, all these questions will come up, thinking that yes, world is moving to digital. Then what is the relevance of analog? What is the relevance of an analog designer or an analog engineer? But mostly such questions will come mainly because of two reasons. One is either they did not understand what is analog design, then this question can come. Other thing is, if you do not want to deal with the challenges of analog design, also we can think in this way. So here I want to bring the point that even today, or even after many years, analog design will be relevant, and this talk will definitely help you to understand why analog design will be relevant, right? So before moving ahead, I just want to tell you one more thing. Yeah, Pavitra, I saw your message. Curious to know something unknown. All right, thank you. So electronic systems. So in our day-to-day life, whatever electronic systems we see, they basically perform two principal functions. One is either they will sense or receive a signal. Not either. It will sense or receive a signal, and then it will process and extract information from it. So that is what any electronic system will do today. For example, cell phone. You take your cell phone. So what a cell phone does? Cell phone will receive a signal, probably an RF signal, and after processing that RF signal, it will provide the voice of the data which I am communicating, right? Similarly, if you take any other electronic system, say for example, a camera, digital camera. So what it does, it will definitely sense the intensity emitted from various parts of an object. And after sensing the intensity of sensing the light intensity, it will process and result in an image, right? So that is what happens in electronic system. So sensing or receiving a signal and processing and extracting information is something which is happening, right? And we know that, or whenever we say that we are in a digital world, the processing is now carried out in digital domain. So what about analog? Yeah, so here comes the question, what is analog? So can I get some response from the chat, in the chat? What do you understand by analog, or what is analog? So the responses will help you to understand that you guys are listening to me. So please feel free, respond so that the next 1.5 hour time will be useful. Analog continuous. Yes, thank you, Sony, for that. Yes, something continuous, right? All right. Any more response? Yeah, it is continuous. It is something continuous. Yes. Let's see. So whatever we see today, whatever we hear, and whatever we perceive in life, everything is analog. I can definitely make that statement. So whether it is a voice or a music signal, or it is a seismic activity, all the physiological, all the signals which exist in nature are analog. So what is analog? Analog is what we perceive in our everyday life, right? But now, as an engineering student, or as an engineer, or as a faculty, how we understand this analog is actually in the form of a signal, right? We call it as a signal. So how will we? So engineers will understand analog as a signal, right? That is why I think Sony also responded that it is continuous. So what is signal? Basically, signal is any information converted into electrical form, right? So see, when I'm talking here, when the speech signal, when I plot the speech signal on a time axis, and when I plot the intensity of my voice, that becomes a signal, right? Because when I convert that in electrical form, that becomes a signal. So as we know, it is continuous in nature. So whenever we say analog, it is continuous in nature. Now, so then what is analog circuit? So circuits which process this analog signals, or circuits which process this continuous signals, are called as analog circuits, right? Now, as I mentioned before, so if you look at any signal processing system, I can generalize any signal processing system in this form. You can see at the left end, as I mentioned, all the natural signals are analog, and as engineers, we will understand that as continuous in time and continuous in amplitude. We call it as CTCA signal. Now, those signals will be sensed or received by sensors, numerous sensors. It could be a microphone, it could be some other sensors, depending on what signal we have. And after sensing the signal, before processing it, what we do today is we will convert that signal from the analog form to digital form. And for that, we use something called as interface electronics, or we call it as signal conditioning blocks. And what those signals conditioning blocks today are A to D converters or D to A converters, basically analog to digital converters or digital to analog converters. So what it does is ADC converts an analog signal into digital, and the rest of the processing. So sensing is actually, we will sense the analog signal, we will convert that into digital, and the rest of the processing will be happening in digital domain. And after that, if I want to hear, or if I want to get the information back, I need another block called as DAC. We call it as digital to analog converter, and that will be converting the digital signal back to analog, and that will be actuated, that will be transmitted to actuators. It could be speakers or anything of that kind. So you could see that there is a conversion from continuous time, from continuous amplitude, to discrete time, discrete amplitude, and again back to continuous time and continuous amplitude, right? So at this point, is it clear for you guys? As long as human exists, definitely analog signals will be there. So however we say that the world is going digital, analog signals will still exist, and those signals will be converted into digital domain. So even though the digital is taking a lot of space, analog signals are still there. And since the technology is advancing so much in digital, the challenges especially in the converters to convert from analog to digital is also increasing. So with that, I would say, even though the world is going digital, analog is important, because analog electronics links real world to digital world. all the physical signals are analog and continuous time and continuous amplitude in nature. Then why digital? Because digital signals have higher noise immunity and it is very easy to store compared to storing an analog signal. So what we do is we interface, we condition, and we process analog signals, right? So with that, I hope you understood why we are talking about analog today in this 2021, right? So with one example, I just want to bring you the relevance also. So I know that today iPhone, many versions has come up, but what I have the chipset is of iPhone 7, that is I'm just showing it. So I hope you can see the chipset on the screen, right? The left side is the finished product what you use, and the right side is the internal chipset, right? So, but when you get the product in the form, and when you get this as the finished product in your hand, there is lot many people, or the creative skill or the ability or the knowledge of lot many people has actually come together, right? So what we are going to do now is actually to make an effort to understand like who all are there, or what are the role of various people in bringing up this one finished product today. So why I have taken the example of mobile phone is basically to connect with you, because this is what something we carry every day, every time, right? So probably you would have seen that there is a processor, there is a RAM memory, then baseband modems, then power amplifiers, transceivers, again ROM codecs, then power management, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, etc. Right? So we can see for whatever circuits or whatever we need here, everything starts with components or devices. So definitely component designers are very, very important, or their contribution is important. They should design a component. So with components, circuit designers will design various circuits required. Then once the circuit is designed, we have to convert that circuit into an IC form, so that we take the help of people called as layout engineers. Then once the layout is ready, so maybe the terms layout may be new for you, I don't know. So what it happens is, when you have a circuit, when you want to translate that circuit onto a substrate, we do in the process of laying out, we will lay out, in the sense we will actually convert the circuit into the substrate, and that after laying out, the IC will be fabricated or manufactured in a foundry, we call it as foundry, and there we will have process engineers. Then, as I mentioned, when an IC go in the form of a finished product, definitely we should add, there should be testing methodologies included in that, and after the manufacture of IC, it also should be able to validate the performance of the IC. So testing and validation engineers are also required. Then once the IC is ready, then you have to mount that IC onto a breadboard and see how it works. So basically, we need PCB engineers. Then we need communication engineers in order to design all the communication related stuff. And then we also need memory designers, where if you want to design RAM, ROM, or other memory components, we need memory designers. Then probably you would have heard about EMI or EMC, electromagnetic interface compatibility. So any product which comes to market should actually pass the various requirements of EMI and EMC. So there should be such engineers role coming into picture. Then DSP engineers who takes care about digital signal processing, especially the processor. Then system engineers who looks the overall system. The network engineers who brings in the connectivity and other things, and definitely software engineers who play an important role in actually making everything work together, right? So if you look at this chipset of a modern mobile phone, you can see that many engineers play an important role, and in that circuit designers or component designers play the initial role, or with the help of them only we can actually come up with circuits. So, and if you look at the various components seen here, you can see amplifiers, a lot of amplifiers here, you can see transceivers here, you can see power management circuits, and all these circuits are still analog, and it will be analog, right? At least for wireless communication. So with that, I'm just closing my first segment, and if you have any questions, you can ask now, or even you can put in the chat box. Are there any questions? Are you guys with me? Can I get some response? Am I too fast and the pace okay? Are you able to follow? Thank you, Sony.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions here? Definitely, I can take questions even at the end. But in between, I'm just asking. So എൻ്റെ pace speed കൂടുതലാണെങ്കിൽ definitely പറയണം, put a message. I'll definitely look into that, right? So with that, I am going to the second segment, and after the segment we'll take a 5 minutes break. So in next 20 minutes what we'll do is we will start with one of the important component called MOSFET. We'll just see the overview and characteristics. I'll not do in detail here. In third segment I'll do a little more detail. Then we will see the difference between analog, digital, mixed signal or RFICs. Then we'll also see what is a MOSFET. So when I say MOSFET, it is I'm talking about the planar MOSFET, and I hope you would have heard about new geometries has come in, like FinFET or other things. So we can definitely discuss about that even at the end of the session. After that, we'll also see what is an analog IC design process, and finally we will see how to start. So this will help you to start with analog design at the end of this segment, right? So quickly, I am going to the MOSFET overview and CARA. So I'm assuming that you know about this device. So if you are aware about this device, please do let me know in the chat box so that I'll be confident enough to say some things. But definitely, I'll help you to understand more about this. Right. So as any other component, maybe when you start your engineering study, you would have started with active and passive components where you learned about resistors, capacitors, inductors, and today you will also see that the fourth component in that list is memristors. Similarly, in active components, you would have heard about bipolar junction transistors, UJTs, FETs, SCR, and you would have also definitely heard about MOSFET. So it comes under the category of field effect transistor, whose principle is slightly different from that of bipolar junction transistor. So I'm not going to the basics of device theory. I'm not going to explain you about the function or how a MOSFET works, but still we can actually, you have a hope, you can definitely hope something out of this session, because I'm totally talking from the perspective of a circuit designer, where circuit designer will treat the device to some extent as a black box, because for a circuit designer, what he wants to know is only the CARA, how a device will function, how a device will perform when you apply a specific voltage, how much current will you get from that, and what is the nature of the current, right? That is what we will be looking at here. So probably you would have definitely seen this picture of a MOSFET. What you are seeing on the screen is an N-channel MOSFET. So that starts on a P substrate, and where you have two N+ regions, and you have a gate here, source and drain on these regions. So to brief about this, what we are interested here is a current which flows from source to drain, which is controlled by gate. That is the only current what we are interested, right? And there is no gate current in contrast to BJT, because in BJT you can definitely see a base current, but here not, because the gate is isolated from the rest of the device, right? So since you have, even though MOSFET is a 4-terminal device, we do our study, at least our primary study, we will do with respect to 3 terminals, and we always say that body will be connected to source for a very specific reason, right? Now, so when you have a 3-terminal device, so assuming that body terminal, I'm not considering the body terminal. So when you have a 3-terminal device, you can actually have 2 potentials. You can talk about 2 different potentials applied. So one is VGS and another one is VDS, right? So what we will do first is we'll try to understand how the current in this MOSFET vary or change when there is a change in VGS or when there is a change in VDS. So the performance or how a MOSFET will react is when your VG is varying, your drain current will actually increase in this fashion. We call this as a square law. And when you vary VD, your current will initially increase in a linear fashion, and later it will saturate. So I just want to bring in this picture to your mind that whenever you have a MOSFET, your MOSFET, maybe can I get some response from your side? Are you aware about this device of MOSFET? Can I get some response? In the chat? Yes, thank you so much. All right, so you would have seen that MOSFET is having 2 regions, or if you are not aware, take it from me, a MOSFET is a device which is a 3-terminal device, and we are interested in a current called as drain current, and the CARA of the MOSFET, especially ID versus VDS CARA, is like this. And if you look at the CARA, you can see that in this portion, you can see that current is increasing in proportion with the applied voltage. And after a specific point, current is not increasing or current is actually getting saturated. And for that reason, we call this region as saturation region. And the region where current increases in linear way, we call it as a linear region or a resistive region, or we call it as a triode region, right? So this is how a MOSFET, Kara looks like. Now, since here the current is in proportion to voltage, we call, or this is a resistor. This in this region, MOSFET behaves as a resistor. And here, since the current is constant, MOSFET behaves as a constant current source, right? And if you look at the current equation, this is what the current equation is. The equation is half mu n C ox W by L VGS minus VT the whole square. Now, what is mu n? Mu n is called as mobility. C ox is the oxide capacitance. W and L are the dimensions of the device. And VGS minus VT, we call it as overdrive voltage, right? So even if you do not know these things, it is perfectly fine. This is just a current equation, all right? So moving on, when I say MOSFET works as a resistor, or it provides a current which is proportional to the voltage, that is what is utilized in a digital IC. Because when you say a digital IC, what we are looking for is basically we need some switches. Because if you look at any digital function, how we will represent is we'll represent in the form of ones and zeros, right? So we need, when the switch is closed, it should actually give a very low resistance. When the switch is open, it should actually give a very high resistance or infinite resistance. So if I switch MOSFET between the resistor region and the cutoff region, or when there is no current, so when there is no current, MOSFET acts as an open switch with infinite resistance. And when it is in linear region, the resistance is very, very small. At least in this region, the resistance is very small, and it will act as a closed switch, right? That is what is utilized in a digital IC. But we are not looking at that. We are looking at the other region where we call it as a current, where the MOSFET is operating as a current source. That region is called as saturation region. Right. So this is what we are utilized in an analog IC. And from here on in my discussion, we will assume that MOSFET is in saturation. Now, how the MOSFET will be in saturation? There are specific conditions. If you keep the VGS voltage slightly more than the threshold, and if you keep the drain voltage higher than gate voltage or equal to gate voltage, if you satisfy those two conditions, MOSFET will be definitely in saturation. And we are talking about a transistor where the MOSFET remains in saturation region, right? So as I mentioned, I'll also bring the differences between analog, digital, and the other IC. So when you say digital IC, most of the time you will have only MOSFETs, right? You will have only MOSFETs, and the MOSFET will be either on or off. So to implement a digital function. But when you talk about analog IC, apart from MOSFET, sometimes you will have resistors, and if you have capacitors. So can tell me what is the role of a capacitor in an IC? Capacitors are usually used to store something, right? So whenever this data converters, or whenever we need to convert analog signal into digital, we will take the analog signal, we'll store it, and then we'll convert. So that time we'll use capacitors. And if you are using a MOSFET resistor and a capacitor, such ICs we call it as mixed signal IC, because you will be definitely going to do some function of some conversion function. So why it is called as mixed signal? Because it will have both analog as well as digital signal. It will be converting analog to digital. Now, when you come to the cell phone, or when you come to the chipset, what I have shown before in the previous slide, you will also see one more component, that is inductor component. And whenever you have inductor in your circuit, we call it as RFIC, because inductors help us to work at higher frequency. So we call it as radio frequency integrated circuit. So this is how you can radio frequency IC. All right. Are there any questions? I'm just checking the chat. No. Yeah. If you have questions in between, please post it, or you can stop me and you can ask in between. Now, coming back to the MOSFET, so if you look at the history, it was initially patented by Lilienfeld in 1928, but the manufacturing or the manufacturing methods were not available to manufacture it. But it was manufactured in late 1960 after a bipolar junction transistor, but by the same Bell Labs. And this is what a transistor, as we have seen before. Now, I want to bring your attention to this region where you can see I have marked it as L. So previously I told the two dimensions of the MOSFET, one is width and one is length. And this is length, and length is often called as So if you have a MOSFET with the three regions as gate, drain, and source, we mark the distance between source and drain as length, L of the MOSFET, and that is otherwise called as feature size or process node or technology node, right? So I'm not very sure whether you have heard about scaling of technology. So previously in the early 1960s, when the initial integrated circuit was found, even though it was not with MOSFET, in the initial MOSFET-based integrated circuits, the size of the MOSFET was big compared to what we see today. So to have a glimpse at that, we call them as process. So we call it as process node or technology node, and it started from even more than 10 micrometers. So the length between the source and drain was initially 10 micro or more than that. Then all those from 10 micro to 1 micrometer, we call them as micron process, and later due to scaling. So what do you mean by scaling? We scale the dimensions of the MOSFET and we'll make it small. Accordingly, MOSFET also had some interesting behavior or interesting properties. So initially from 10 micro to 1 micro, later it has in the form of nano, we call it a sub-micron, and if it is less than 100, we call it as nanometer process. And today, you can see that with Intel or any other company, the chips are coming out even with transistors lesser than 10 nanometers, right? And specifically from less than 22 nanometer, the geometry also has changed. It is no longer planar. Less than 20 nanometer, we call something called as FinFET, which is having a three-dimensional structure, right? So why it is important? So one thing is, so how is this possible? This is possible because the process methods what we use to fabricate MOSFETs were helpful even for scaling. We could scale down the geometry, we could size the MOSFET down, and similarly the properties of the MOSFET also have changed, right? So, but in most of the analog or in RF or mixed signal, even today we can see ICs coming out even with larger nanometers like 180 nanometer, 130 nanometer, or even of this range. Not even, it is not like all the ICs of analog, mixed or RF are coming under 20 nanometer. It is not like that, right? So one more thing I want to stress here is, so when I say 10 micrometer, even the largest technology node, if it is more than 10 micro also, what is the size? What is 10 micro? How can you imagine the 10 micrometer size? It is actually 1/10 of the thickness of our human hair. So that is as small as that, right? So it is impossible to handpick such components and do design. We cannot do that. Definitely, we need the help of some software, or we need the help of some other tools. So we'll talk about that a little later, right? So are there any questions here? Am I going fast? Are you guys with me? Can I get some response? Are you guys with me? Can I get some response in the chat? You can, no need to unmute if you're not comfortable, but you can definitely put message in your chat. Yes, I know Sony is listening. Apart from Sony, who else is there? Thank you, Anup. Thank you, Prajesh, sir. Nimisha, all right, yeah. Sorry, I'm taking out the names. I'm not sure whether it's a student or a faculty. Sorry, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so again, at this point, I also want to mention about Moore's law, even though we talk about more than Moore today, because today, like Moore's law states that the number of transistors in an IC doubles every 18 to 24 months, and today it is more than Moore. The number of transistors are not in that fashion. It is not doubling, it is actually increasing even more than that. So why I'm mentioning Moore's law here is, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the transistors are scaling down, and that is why we were able to integrate more and more transistors into a single integrated circuit, right? Yeah, so again, coming back to the same chipset, so I just want to mention here the two differences. The difference is how an analog IC design process happens and how a digital IC design process happens. So coming to analog IC design, so for any design process, it starts with a specification. We'll definitely have a set of requirements. We'll start with that. Then we'll talk about the system level design, and then that system will be broken down into small circuits, and we'll talk about circuit level design. So how do we start? We start with circuit simulations, and after circuit simulations, if you are getting the specified results, you will actually go for system level simulation, and once the entire system simulation is ready, we will actually lay out the design. So laying out is actually transferring your circuit from your software platform to Foundry, where you can actually manufacture the physical chips, and then there only we'll do the top level interconnect. Then we will verify. Yeah. So before fabrication, we'll do the interconnection. we'll verify the results again after laying out, and we'll fabricate the IC. This is what happens in an analog IC design process. Now, and most of this process, what I have mentioned here, needs more human intervention because it is more, even today it needs more human intervention. But at the same time, when you look at the digital side, the process looks similar. You will have system design, but there you no need to do a circuit level design because you would have learned about a course called as HDL, right? Verilog or VHDL, where you will write a code and you will actually generate a circuit. Right? In similar way, in digital ICs, you have an option to write a piece of code and translate that in the form of gates. We say that process is synthesis process. So through synthesis, we'll be able to generate the circuit, and then we can go for system level simulations. Even the layout can be automatically generated. Even today, even analog IC layouts can be automated to some extent, but it is easy. It is more with respect to digital. And then again, you have to do interconnection at the top level. That also can be auto-routed, even verification and then fabrication. So even though the steps involved in designing an analog IC and a digital IC looks similar, tools helps to a greater extent in the case of digital IC than in analog IC. So in analog IC, human intervention is more. That is why even the talk was about artistry of analog design, because it needs the creative skill or create the ability of a designer or an engineer to bring in his skill to get the best out of an analog IC. That doesn't mean that I'm not telling that digital IC designers whatever they do are very easy. It's not like that, but the tools or the softwares will help to a greater extent compared to analog IC. All right. So I'm just briefing the analog IC design process. Everything starts with brainstorming ideas. It comes to system level. Then it comes to component or circuit level. And then we will go for verifications or simulations. And after simulation, we will actually translate it into layout. We call it as physical translation. And once laying out is done, we will actually fabricate the IC. And once the IC is fabricated, you will package it. So after packaging, whatever you can see here, this is what you will be seeing in your labs, right? So that IC is coming out after a lot of process, right? So after packaging, you will actually go test and debug the IC. And once you understand that debugging or the IC is proper, then you will actually prototype it. You will see, you will wire it on a PCB and see how it works. Then you will characterize in the sense you will see the functionality and you will see what are the measured parameters compared to the simulation parameters. Then if there is a need of an evaluation board, you will try for an evaluation board, or you will actually go to commercialize it as a product. So this is what the detailed steps involved in an analog IC design process, right? So as a student or as a faculty or as an engineering graduate, you will be able to involve in all these processes. The only thing is you should start from the very basics. So it is not easy for everyone to master in all these areas, because as I mentioned in one of the slides where I showed the various roles of various engineers, so it is any product or any IC is actually bringing many skills and capabilities together, right? So but the knowledge of each and every stage is important, so that if you are interested in any one of this, you can definitely choose that, right? So now coming to the end of the second segment. So the question is, I have told many things about analog IC design. Now I'm just telling you how you can start. If you haven't started, you have interest, but you have no idea how to start, this is how you can start. The very first thing is you should know about devices. So when I say you should know about devices, it is not like you have to go to the in-depth physics of the device. If you can, it is best. If not, also you can actually try, right? So you should know about the functionality or the operation of devices. It could be MOSFETs, it could be BJTs, or any new devices. Once you know about devices, you should understand. So when I say how to know a device, is to understand the terminal characteristics, right? What is meant by terminal chara? If you vary the voltage across this device, how the current varies, or if you vary the voltage across another two terminals, how the current varies. That is what is called as terminal chara. Once you understand once you get the basics of device and once you understand the chara of a device, you can actually understand circuits, right? Because circuits are basically bringing these devices and like circuits are basically for any specific, say for example, amplifier. So we'll bring in some suitable components, suitable devices there, and we'll make a circuit. That is for a specific need. So you should understand about device, terminal, Kara, and circuits. So that is actually our part, our role. So once you are okay with this, you can actually start with a schematic entry, the functionality check of that, and laying out of that. So these three things, we will have an aid, or we will have the help of a tool or a software. Right? I'll talk about the software tools, what can be used in order to do this schematic entry, functional check, and layout at the end of in the fourth segment. Right now we are in the second segment, and we'll be taking a very short break now. Right. So one more thing I want to clarify: why do we need the help of softwares? Is basically because, as I mentioned, we will not be able to handpick the components because the components are very, very small. So what we do is, there are companies, we call them as EDA tools, electronic design automation tools, and there are foundries, or the places where the ICs are getting fabricated. So they will give you something called as design kit. We call them as process design kit. That will have the information about the MOSFET, how a physical MOSFET will look like. The similar models will be available. So you can use those models and you can do simulations, and the simulation results will, if you are using a very good model, the simulation results will also match with the fabrication results, what you will get, right? So here I am winding up the second session. Now I am open for questions. If you have questions, you can ask. Are there any questions? All right. At least, are you guys with me? Are you able to listen or understand what I was talking? Yeah. So what I will do is, yeah, thank you, ma'am, for that. Yeah. So what I will do now is I'll just switch to another device where I just want to show a design to you guys, and I'll come back and I'll show a simulation also. Yeah, I'm just connecting my other device. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah. So am I audible? I hope you can see the screen. Yes, definitely, Vidya, I'll be talking about research opportunities at the end in the fourth segment. This is my third segment. So I'll be doing some basics here. Maybe for faculty, this will be a very the cliche things, because you would have done this multiple times. But so why I have included this is, when I have done the pre-webinar survey, so I have posted some questions, and some questions were like that. They wanted to know much about models for analog design and how we do a simple design with analog, right? So that is why I have this segment. So this will be for another 20 to 25 minutes. After that, I'll come back and I'll talk about the research opportunities, definitely. Yes. Yeah. So moving on. Yeah. So I need to talk about the models used for analog design. So what do you understand by model? So, so anyway, the device what we will be using will be MOSFET, that to a planar MOSFET. And as I mentioned before, there will be 4 terminals, and I'll be for convenience, I'll be considering that body will be connected to the source terminal. And now my primary focus is actually to design an amplifier. Why amplifier? Because as I mentioned, since the natural signals or the signals what we deal in our day-to-day life are having a continuous nature, and that too, they say, for example, if I look at EEG signal, or if it is ECG signal, or if it is voice or music or seismic, whatever it is, all these signals are in the range of milli or in terms of microvolt, right? So we are interested to have a circuit, we call it as amplifier, to amplify this small signal. So these signals we call as small signals. And we wanted to amplify, or we want to know how we can amplify these small signal using this device, right? And since MOSFET is widely used for amplification, I'll also be taking this with respect to MOSFET. Now, when we talk about amplifier, one important performance parameter of amplifier is gain, right? Gain is one of the important performance parameter, or we call it as amplification factor. So as I mentioned before, in my discussion here, I'll be assuming that MOSFET is in saturation region. So why saturation? In saturation region only, I can have MOSFET with a behavior of a constant current source, right? So now my interest here is, so having MOSFET in the form of this symbol will not help me to understand how this MOSFET will work, or how this MOSFET will actually do amplification. So what I need is, I need to know, or if I can represent this MOSFET in terms of some known elements, that will help me to understand how this MOSFET really work or really operate, and that will help me to understand in further analysis, right? So what I will do now is, so MOSFET, I am interested in these voltage, VGS voltage, and another voltage is VDS, and the condition for saturation, I am just writing straight away the condition. The VGS voltage should be greater than VT, and your VDS voltage should be greater than or equal to VGS minus VT. These are the 2 conditions what we need to do in order to make sure that the transistor is in saturation region. Now, when you do that, MOSFET will definitely, so whenever there is a VDS voltage, MOSFET will definitely carry a current, and I can mark that current as ID, right? Now, this ID I can write, since there are 2 voltages applied here, I can write ID as a function of VGS and VDS. So the drain current is now a function of 2 voltages. One is VGS and another one is VDS, right? So I'll make a small effort to understand how, or to bring the behavior of this MOSFET with respect to both the voltages, with respect to VGS as well as with respect to VDS. So we know that ID versus VGS will have a graph of this shape. It's not correct. It is VT. And if you have ID versus VDS, it will have something like this. This is ID versus VDS, right? So what I will do is, I'll just look at this. I'll just look at this. I'll study about how MOSFET current varies with respect to VGS, right? So what I have applied here is all DC voltages, both VGS and VDS, and I'm assuming that MOSFET is in saturation. Now, as I have given a DC voltage, I can definitely expect a DC current, and I'll mark it as ID. This is what the notation I'll be using. Now, since I am interested to know how this MOSFET responds to small signal, because my intention is to design an amplifier which responds to a small signal, I am doing that study here by actually applying a small signal. Let me use a different color. Using a small signal here, I call it as VGS, and I want to know how this MOSFET responds to that. So whenever I gave a DC voltage, I can expect a DC current. So when I'm giving a varying voltage, I call it as AC voltage or a small signal, definitely current also will have some variation, but that variation will be from a DC variation, right? So how will I picturize this? So if I have MOSFET Cara here, this is my MOSFET Cara, right? Now, when I give a specific VGS, say this is my VGS axis and this is my ID DC. Now, if I am giving this specific VGS, what I can say is this will be the current flowing in the MOSFET and this will be the DC current. Now, on this VGS, on this DC VGS, if I am trying to apply a small signal, a varying signal of this form, definitely, since the MOSFET cara is like this, I can expect a variation in the current here. Right. So with respect to the varying voltage, MOSFET also will actually have a varying current. Right. But how this helps me to model a MOSFET? So that is what I'm going to do. So if I look at the MOSFET, I have both DC and AC. So I'll mark this voltage as small v capital Gs just to give a notation that there is both DC as well as AC voltage. Right. So I know the MOSFET current equation in saturation, what I have written before. Since I have both AC and DC current, I'll write it in the form of the combined. We call it as a composite signal, ID, and that is equal to half mu and Cox W by L. Again, the voltage is a composite voltage, so I'll call it as VGS minus VT, the whole square. Now, what is VGS here? VGS is a sum of a DC voltage and a small signal voltage, right? So I will expand in this form. Definitely, you can see this, how we derive this model in many standard books. So this is DC VGS, and this is my small signal, and this is minus VT, the whole square. Now, when I expand this, this one, I can write this as, I'll just bring in VGS minus VT together and VGS separately and just do the square. So this is of the form A plus B, the whole square. And if I expand, I can write it as half mu and Cox W by L into VGS minus VT, the whole square, which will be the first term. Second term will be again half mu and Cox W by L into 2 into, sorry, 2 into VGS minus VT into VGS. And there will be one more term, which is half mu and Cox W by L into VGS square. So these are the three terms coming in, right? So as I mentioned, VGS is a small signal. VGS square, I am actually neglecting for my convenience. So I am just neglecting this VGS square term. I'm not worried about that term. And my argument for that is, if VGS is very small, VGS square will be still smaller. So I'm just neglecting. Now, if I look at the other two terms here, I can definitely identify the first term as a DC current ID, and the second term should be the AC current or the small signal current, right? So what is my takeaway from here? So if composite current ID is a sum of DC current and AC current, but I have made one assumption here by neglecting my VGS square term, and that will not affect my analysis in any way. So what I can do is I can write ID is equal to mu and Cox W by L into VGS minus VT. So what is the into VGS? Right. Now, if you look at this, this term is what we call as the transconductance of the MOSFET, or we generally call this as GM. So this is ID is equal to GM into VGS. To make it very clear, MOSFET, so in any analog application, we want to use MOSFET in saturation. To make MOSFET in saturation, we need to provide proper DC voltages to fix the operating point or the bias point. And once MOSFET is in saturation, we'll provide a signal, and then MOSFET will respond to that signal. Right. Now, how did MOSFET respond to the small signal? ID could be written as GM into VGS. So what is this G? Generally, G is conductance. We mark it as GM or mutual conductance or transconductance because voltage is applied at one end and current we are measuring at the other end. So this is a kind of transfer of control from gate to drain, right? So this is what we call as the relation between the small signal drain current and the small signal voltage what we applied. Now, how does this help us to do something better? Since this GM is a parameter which related or which brought me the relation between small signal current and small signal voltage, we call this parameter as a small signal parameter. So this is one of the small signal parameter. Right. So now with the help of this parameter, I can definitely model a MOSFET. How can I model? So if I consider there are three terminals to the MOSFET, one is source, if one is gate and one is drain, there is no physical connection between gate and drain. There is no physical connection between gate and source. That is why these terminals are kept apart. But now what happens? In that MOSFET, if I'm providing a signal, a varying signal of VGS between gate and source, what you can see is you can definitely expect a current. What is that current? Current is GM into VGS. So I can definitely model a MOSFET by understanding this operation in the form of a controlled current source. And this is what the very basic model of an ideal MOSFET. So we call this as ideal MOSFET model. Are you guys with me? Can I get some response? Am I going very fast? Can I get some response? All right, thank you. Yeah, so this is your ideal MOSFET model. Now I'll tell you how this MOSFET model will help you to understand further. All right. So one more thing I want to see here. So when there is a small change in VGS, I am actually getting a change in drain current, and that is what I have represented in the form of the transconductance parameter GM. So how will I define GM? GM is basically the variation in this ID with respect to VGS, but that is measured at a specific operating point VGS, DC operating point VGS. Now, why did I put dou function here, partial derivative? Because your drain current is a function of multiple variables, right? So this is how I basically define the transconductance of a MOSFET, and with that, now I got the equivalent circuit, or now I got the model, for the basic model for the MOSFET. Right. This is called as ideal MOSFET model because I did not include any non-ideality. But this model can be developed further. How can I develop? I can do the same thing with respect to the VDS voltage, right? So I'll leave this as VGS, which is the DC VGS. This I'll not be explaining in detail. Here you will have a VDS, and I am just connecting a varying voltage here. Now this is VDS and this is small VDS. So this doesn't mean that you will be providing a signal at the drain, a varying signal, and expecting something at the gate. That is not the meaning. The meaning is only this: if you provide a varying signal at gate, even the drain, there will be definitely a varying signal at varying current at drain. So that makes that will also result in a varying voltage at drain, right? That is the basic idea. So how will I study this? So the first study was based on variation of ID with respect to VGS. Now the study is based on variation of ID with respect to VDS. Right. So how will I do this? For that, I should know the terminal cara. So what is the terminal cara? I know that VDS and ID is related in this way. And in ideal MOSFET, it is constant. But in practical MOSFET, we see a small increase in this current, and we call it as channel length modulation. Right. Now, the same thing what I have done for the variation with respect to VGS, if I apply here, for a DC current, I'll have DC voltage, I'll have a DC current. But for this AC voltage, which is VDS, I will have an AC current of ID. Now, I am interested to know how the variation in VDS will result in a variation in ID. So, how can I study that? I'll again look at a specific VDS, and at that VDS, if there is any change in voltage, that will be reflected towards. So the initial DC VDS will give you a DC current. This is your DC current. On that, there will be a very minute variation in the current. So if you look at both VGS and VDS, the effect of VGS on drain current is much more compared to the effect of VDS on ID, right? So since this is the relation between the small signal current ID and small signal voltage of VDS, I can always bring the relation in terms of G, conductance. Since the drain current and drain voltage, since both we are measuring at the same terminal, or we generally call this as output terminal, we call this as output conductance also, right? So how will I? So this is the next small signal parameter. The first small signal parameter was GM, which has given you the relationship between drain current and gate to source voltage. But now G0 is bringing you the relationship between VDS and ID. Right? How will I write G0? G0 can be written as dou ID by dou VDS, but at a very specific VDS, right? So this can be obtained. So by taking the drain current equation of MOSFET, this can be elaborated. This can be derivative can be taken, and finally you will result in this equation. I'm just taking that equation for reference, lambda into ID sat, or if I represent this in the form of resistance, I can call it as 1 by lambda into ID sat. Right. So GM equation, I have derived it. But for R0, I did not do that. I have directly written the expression here, right? So how can I, so now I understood the relationship between or the variation of ID with respect to both VGS and VDS. Now what can I do? I can improve the model of the MOSFET. The previous model was this. The previous model was, the MOSFET was actually acting as a controlled current source whose value is controlled by the gate voltage GM-VGS in this fashion. This was the model. Now I can add on to that. How can I add? Now I can add one more control source here. One more control source I can put, and I can mark it as G0 into VDS. Right. So this will be a more detailed model of MOSFET. Right. But one thing you can observe here, as this is your gate terminal, this is your source terminal, and this is your drain terminal. Now, if you look at the control source of G0 VDS, G0 VDS is a controlled current source. And what is a controlling variable? Controlling variable is across the current source itself, right? So you have a controlled current source, which is G0 into VDS, and the voltage across the source is that VDS itself. That means when this voltage varies, I can expect a linear variation in this current, right? So that means I can even equate this as a resistance of value R0. That is why you will often see the model of a MOSFET or the small signal model of a MOSFET in most of the literature or in most of the books in the form of a resistance R0. So this is the model, which is R0. This is GM into VGS. This is plus or minus VGS. And this is gate, this is source, and this is drain. All right. I hope you guys are with me since in the afternoon, and I'm taking some small signal equivalent circuit. I don't know how far you are with me. All right. So now again, coming back to the initial discussion. So what I want to know is I want to design an amplifier. I want to know how much gain that amplifier can give to my small signal. So for that, I first studied how a MOSFET responds to small signal, and I obtained suitable models in terms of some known elements. Now I have a model ready with me. Then now I can go ahead and study how, or I can go ahead and design how a amplifier, I can design an amplifier now, right? So just to brief about, or just to give an overview about amplifiers, since we have 3 terminals, you can have about 6 combinations you can get out of this 3. But in that, only 3 are useful, and we call them as common source, common drain, and common gate configuration, right? I'm not going to the details of that. So coming only to the first very basic amplifier of common source, why we call it as common source is because the source terminal is kept common with respect to input and output. So I'm just trying to draw that. Now what I should do for a MOSFET, in order to act as an amplifier, it should be biased suitably in saturation. So I need to properly give a voltage here, even though in integrated circuits, voltage bias is not preferred. And since drain terminal also will be connected to a voltage, say this is connected to VDD, and from this point we'll take output, and here I'll give the input. This is a very basic amplifier structure, right? So what I have done, I have taken a MOSFET. I know that this MOSFET will respond to a small signal. I biased it suitably. That means I need to fix my VGS and VDS. So how will I fix my VGS, VDS? VDS is now fixed by VDD minus. If this is RD, VDD minus this drop will be your VDS, right? So both VGS and VDS are fixed, and I will make sure that the transistor is in saturation. Once I know that the transistor is in saturation, I'll try to give a varying signal at the input, and I will see how the transistor responds to that, right? Now, this is a point where the small signal equivalent circuit or the models comes into picture, right? So what will I do now is I'll draw the model of the MOSFET first. What is the model I know about this MOSFET? I know that the model here is GM-VGS and a resistance of value R0. This is what I know about the MOSFET. This is plus minus VGS. This is your drain. This is your source terminal, and this is your gate terminal, right? Now, when I do analysis of amplifier, I am interested only in how amplifier respond to small signal. I am not concerned about DC at all, because DC is already fixed, operating point is already fixed, and the transistor is in saturation. So that is why in all small signal analysis, we will consider that the voltages which are not changing will be considered as zero, right? That means VDD point will be assumed that VDD will be short to ground. Why? Because VDD is not a changing voltage. Since the voltage is constant, since there is no variation to that, that will not be represented in the small signal equivalent circuit. So that is a point. So what I should do, how I should modify the model of the MOSFET. I know the model of the MOSFET, I know the circuit. Now I am trying to map between both. Where the source is connected to ground. I did that connection here. What is a gate? Gate, I have the input signal Vin. What is a drain? At drain, I have a resistance which is connected to supply. But now what I will do, I will connect the resistance here. Instead of connecting to VDD, I will actually connect it to ground. Why I am connecting it to ground? Because what I am representing now is only a small signal picture with only varying quantities. So since VDD is not varying, I am marking it as ground. Now, which is my output point? This is my output point. What I want to know out of this amplifier, I want to know what is the gain of this amplifier. What is gain of the amplifier? AV. AV is V out by V in. Right. Now, how will I write V out? V out is basically the voltage across the transistors, the resistors R0 and RD. Or you can see that R0 and RD are in parallel here. So I'll write it as R0 parallel RD into, what is the current flowing through that? The current flowing is GM into VGS. But what is the direction of the current? Current is flowing in the opposite direction. This is the way the current is flowing, but I'm measuring with respect to this. So I'll just put a minus sign because the current is flowing in the opposite direction, right? What is VGS? VGS is directly my Vin. So VGS is equal to Vin. That give me the expression for voltage gain as AV equal to V out by Vin equal to minus GM into R0 parallel to RD, right? This is what the voltage gain is. Is this clear? Are there any questions? Can I get some response in the chat? Can I get some response? Are you guys with me? Thank you, sir. Yeah, so this is voltage gain formula I have. Now I'll go back. Yes, thank you, Sony. Yeah, so what I'll do is, I'll now take a very simple example, the same circuit, and I'll tell you how you can actually start designing an amplifier. I'm not going to give you the perfect design example. I'm just doing a very crude design, right? So as I mentioned, for any design, it starts with a set of specifications. So I'll also take some minimal specifications here. So I'll take the specification, one is the supply voltage. I'll take it as 3 volt. The gain of the amplifier should be somewhere greater than 5. You can take, I'll take approximately equal to 10. Then I'll take the power of the circuit. The circuit can consume a total of 1 milliwatt of power. And I'll also put a load capacitance. So why load capacitance is, in integrated circuit, every node will have some associated capacitance. So you can assume that the load capacitance is the input capacitance of the next stage or the load itself. Right? This is what I want to achieve, right? So what is the circuit I have? I have the circuit here of this form. This is VDD, this is RD, and this is input and this is output. So when I say design, what I want to get out of this is, I want to know what should be the W by L value of the MOSFET, what should be the resistance value RD. This is what basically I want to know. So how can I start? There are different refined methodologies to approach a design. What I'm explaining to you is a very crude form, I would say. You can start with the power specification. What is power specification? Power is VDD into ID. Right. So I know what is the power I can burn and what is the VDD given 3. So I can definitely get ID. So power will be equal to 1 milli divided by 3 volt, and that will be equal to somewhere around 333 microamps. Right. This is the current. Now I know the gain equation. What is gain equation? Gain equation is GM into R0 parallel RD. So voltage gain is equal to, or the magnitude is equal to, GM into R0 parallel RD right? And this is equal to, so yeah, so this will, from this I need to actually, if I want to proceed, I know what is the voltage gain I want, it is 10. I should find what is GM and I should find what is R naught. Both can be obtained. How will I get? I can get R naught value. R naught can be obtained as 1 by lambda into ID. And in that, for that I need some constant value. So lambda, I'll just take it as 0.6 per volt. Sorry for taking these constants as such, because I don't know whether you guys will understand when I say it is 0.6 per volt. If you're familiar with this, then it will be very easy. So lambda, so again, this lambda and mu and Cox values will come from the process or from the foundry basically. So I'll substitute the value of lambda here and I'll get R naught. So it is 1 by 0.6 into the 333 microamps, which is closely equal to 5K. Right. Now, in order to get a GM value, what I will do is I can I'll take a RD value also equal to 5K, so that I can get GM value from this expression itself. So AV is known, R naught I obtain, RD I am considering taking it, and I'm finding GM. So if I do that, GM as with the previous formula, I have mu and Cox W by L VGS minus VT is there, or there are other formulas for GM, and I'm taking mu and Cox value equal to somewhere 175 microamps per volt. These are not very accurate values. I'm just taking for the model file what I'm using to show the simulation. So with this, if you calculate, you will get the GM value closely equal to 4 milliamps per volt, and that will result in W by L value of the transistor as 138, which is slightly large. If I assume, if I take a L of 180 nanometer, you will result in a width of somewhere around 24.8 micrometers, right? So what I have done is, what we have done is, we started with the ID/VGS and ID/VGS graph. We obtained the model of the ideal MOSFET model. Then we have come to the model where we included something called as channel length modulation. Sorry, I did not mention about that. And then with that model, I have taken a very basic amplifier, obtained the voltage gain expression, and using that expression, I have designed actually a circuit. Right. Now what I will do is I'll actually show the simulation of the same. What are values I have obtained, I'll show the simulation, and then we will close the third segment, and in another 15 minutes, we'll be having the last round of discussion. All right. So I'll be switching my device. So are there any questions on this? I can clarify it now. If there are no questions, I will move to the simulation part. I believe there are no questions. All right, so I will just move to the simulation part. Give me 2 minutes, I'll be joining now. All right. So I hope you have no questions. Yes. Am I audible? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sonu. Yeah. So before coming to the last segment, I will be showing the simulation. So the software what I have taken is a free version, which is provided from Analog Devices. And what you're seeing on the screen is the same common source amplifier. This is the MOSFET, and this is the resistor, and this is the capacitor what I put. And on the left side, what you are seeing is this, we call it as a current mirror. In order to get the proper bias voltage to bias the transistor in saturation, I have used the same size of the MOSFET here and the same current, 333 microamps, connected in a diode connected fashion, so that at this node I'll get a suitable VGS voltage, and that is actually tied to the gate of this. Now, in order to understand the performance of the circuit for an AC analysis, I have actually added a source, AC source, and I am keeping the AC magnitude as 1. So what I will do is, I will actually run this analysis. So I'll go to simulation, and this is what I have set. I'm just performing an AC analysis. Basically, AC analysis will give you the performance of the circuit with respect to frequency, right? So I'm varying from 1 to 1 giga, and I'm just doing the simulation. So when you do that, you will get one more window here, and if you click this node, you will get the result over there. So you can see magnitude and phase on both sides. I'll just will not plot the phase, and what you can see here is only the magnitude. So I have designed for a 10, which was not in dB. So I have designed for a value of 10, and what I'm getting here is very close to 16.6 dB. So as I mentioned before, what the design methodology what I have used is not the very refined one, but what I have used is and even I have taken a few constant values, mu and Cox and lambda, which also will have some variations with respect to technology. So I need to definitely tweak and do and modify the design in order to reach or to meet the specification. So right now I got around 16 dB, which is close to 6. What I need is 10. So this is how we do a simple simulation. Are there any questions from this simulation part? Because of lack of time, not lack of time, because I want to have some interaction time as well, so I am just winding it up. Are there any questions from this? All right, if you have, definitely please ask at the end of the session. So this is how you will start doing a simulation, right? Now, let me go to the final segment, final part of my presentation. This is what we have seen. Yeah. Now in the last 15 minutes, what we do is we will look at the various courses you can take up and what you need to understand if you want to master in this area. Then I'll talk about the different software tools. Then I'll talk about fabrication facilities, and then I'll come to the challenges what you have and the further opportunities what you have today. Right. So coming to the different courses, definitely in your curriculum itself, you will have courses related to this. That is very important, called as Electronic Circuits 1 or Analog Microelectronic Circuits, of both discrete and integrated. So integrated is usually covered in a different course, but if you have together, that is very important, analog AC design. Apart from that, as I mentioned before, if you want to further see, some of you want to pursue your masters, or if you want to do your PhD and you want to start from the fundamentals, so you can start with analog, and later you can develop on the courses like mixed signal IC design, which talks about data converters exclusively. You can also look at the courses like radio frequency IC design, which talks about the transceiver design, like low noise amplifiers, LNA mixers, lot many other stuff. But when you do these courses, you also make sure that you will have some laboratory course. So see, I'm not talking about the changing something in the curriculum. There are so many, so if certain things are not in the curriculum, you can definitely have a parallel study and take up some laboratory, in the sense, some lab related courses where you can explore some EDA tools. And along with EDA tools, you should also get some mastery in PCB level design as well. Right, so these are the courses which are required. Now coming to the software tools, there are so many vendors, so many electronic design automation tools available, and the very popular one is called as Cadence. Cadence Design Systems is an EDA company. They have several wings, and one is for EDA, and they have tools which helps you to do analog design, and the specific tool is called as Virtuoso. Apart from analog design, Cadence also provides tools for testing, for verification, for digital design, etc. the tool I have mentioned here is only for analog design or analog mixed or RF design. The other one comes from Mentor Graphics. We call it as Tanner. There also you will have a circuit design schematic where you can do your designs there. Mentor Graphics is also a fantastic tool. Then apart from that, you have Synopsys, which gives you the custom designer tool. Again, see, all the tools are more or less similar, apart from the GUI what you have. And Silvaco is another tool which is having even Synopsys and Silvaco having both TCAD as well as EDA. And apart from that, see, if none of these tools are accessible, you can start your try with LT Spice, what I have showed now, which is freely downloadable from the site of Analog Devices. You can download, you can attach any model file, and you can definitely work on that. If you need any assistance or help in that, you can ping me. I'll be giving you my details at the end of the session. Now, yeah, so coming to the, so once your design is ready, so what you want to do is actually to translate the design into chip and come up with a chip, right? So you may be interested to know whether we have such facilities in India, right? So again, the very basic step is to study the CMOS process and the PDK, which is obtained from your EDA company through the foundry. Then you should actually go ahead and do circuit level simulation. Again, that is a very detailed stuff where you need to study the state-of-the-art literature, specifications. You should select a proper architecture. You should manually design, then you simulate, then you optimize it. There are a lot many steps involved in circuit level simulation. Once the simulation results are ready and it is meeting specification, you can go and doing the physical design where you need to do layout design, design rule check, antenna rule check, then layout versus schematic, and a lot many other things there. After that, you have to do again simulation to verify whether the post layout simulation is matching with the pre-layout simulation results, because mostly when you do layout, you'll be adding a lot many other parasitic capacitance also, which will result in variation in your results. After that, you will actually go for Monte Carlo simulation on IO library, where you will look at we call it as corners, where you will do something called as corner analysis, where you will study the MOSFETs in all the different corners, like slow, fast, and the typical corners. Then you will bring in the IO pads, where you will be where the pads are required to take contact leads to the package, right? And finally, you will tape out. So tape out is usually done in foundries, and in India, one central government facility what we have is called a semiconductor laboratory at Chandigarh. They have a foundry. They have facility of PDK up to 180 nanometer for analog or digital. So the only thing is the institution should have an MOU signed with them, and they will provide you the PDK. And if you have an EDA tool, you can definitely work with that. That is available in India. Apart from that, other foundries at TSMC, UMC, Global Foundries, Samsung, all these people also have PDK, but you have to look at their requirements and how they will provide to the institutions or the students, right? But definitely they all have some student program where you can enroll and you can do designs and tape it out. Yeah. So coming to the very important thing. So I told that analog design is important, it is relevant, but now what are the challenges we have? So if you are thinking all the designs are already done, are there something more to do, or are we still facing some challenges? So yes, there are a lot many challenges even today, and will be definitely there in future. One is coming out of transistor imperfection. So what I meant by transistor imperfection is, as I mentioned, transistor scaling is happening, and it has scaled to an extent that no more scaling is possible now, right? So as a result of the scaling, the MOSFET, so what happens with scaling is the speed of the device will increase, but at the same time, they will lose their analog properties. So they will behave less analog when you scale the device, right? So one thing is you will definitely observe that the intrinsic gain what you can get out of the MOSFET is showing a decline when you scale down. And not only that, even the characteristics of the MOSFET also are shifting depending on the size, shape, and the distance where it is placed on an IC. So many transistor imperfections are there, and people are studying on those imperfections and bringing up new models so that we can again work with those level transistors. The other one is, as I mentioned, the scaling. Along with scaling, the supply voltage is also actually declining. So in the beginning, if you had a supply voltage of 10 volt, maybe in early 90s, Now, in today, you can see the supply voltage has declined or has come down to 1 or 0.9 or even lesser than that. So what happens is, if you have a certain architecture which cannot be survived with this new supply voltage, definitely we need to discard that architecture, and we have to think about an alternate for that specific architecture. So even that is actually a study. So that is why even today you can see there are a lot many new circuit techniques has come up in order to cope up with the declining supply voltage. Right. The third important challenge is with respect to power consumption, because we know that today we all need portable devices, right? So see, if we need portable devices, we need battery for that, because we cannot carry a wire. And if it is battery powered, we look definitely for a low power device so that the battery life will be more. Right. So that is the need of a low power now. Along with that, we also, if it is a large system, also we look for low power, because that will actually reduce the effort in removing the heat from the entire system. So everywhere we could see that there is a move towards ultra low power circuits or the techniques for that. Then another important challenge is the circuit complexity, because nowadays the number of components are also increasing in a specific circuit. Again, the models are becoming complex, so we need long and tedious simulation procedures in order to verify the result of any specific circuit, especially as I mentioned, to run through all the corners. Then very important and something which we need to do thoroughly is something called as PVT variations. We call it as process voltage and temperature variations, because device and circuit parameters will vary with respect to the fabrication process, with respect to the supply voltage, and also with respect to the temperature. So we'll also see after a design whether it is acceptable for a specific range of PVT variations, right? And finally, we'll also look at the layout related effects, because as the transistor is becoming small enough, we also need to have proper layout techniques to lay out the design on a substrate, and further we can actually look at the effects of that. So these are some of the challenges what we face today, and even when I was mentioning about the challenges, the opportunities are still in that, because if you're interested in pursuing a study on this, definitely you can see how the supply voltage is actually affecting the performance of a circuit, or you can compare. So that level study is also possible. Now coming to the research opportunities, this research opportunities in broader way I have kept. You can work on new devices, you can model new devices and try out the existing circuits itself, or you can actually come up with novel circuit architectures and techniques, so that, as I mentioned, the supply voltage is scaling down. So you have a circuit which works for 5 volt, but now you're not able to scale down and operate it for 3 volt or 1 volt. So what alternate technique I can bring in order to mimic the same functionality? So that is another thing. Then you can, something called as design for testability, which is especially meant for digital circuits. Then people work on design automation with respect to EDA tool and other stuff. There is also something called as optimization of standard cells, where that is also related to digital, where when you have a piece of code, it can be synthesized using the standard cells. And if you look at some of the current research focus, people are working on data converters, especially because, as I told, analog will be there till we exist. But the complexity of data converters, because we need to convert the analog signal into this fast digital world, right? So that complexity will keep on increase, and as a result, you need to work, or you need to come up with new data converters, or with very superior performance data converters are required. Apart from data converters, people also work for low power RF transceivers, high frequency continuous time filters, and we'll also see something which is called as post-mode ICs and systems, where bringing photonics and mixed signal ICs together, or RF and photonics together, or neuromorphic computing and edge AI together. So these are some of the allied fields, not exactly in analog, but these are the fields which has evolved from this, right? So I think, this is the end of my 4th segment, and with that, I'm telling you there are many opportunities ahead. So I have mentioned only a few. If you're interested, you can start doing something, and definitely you will find that many opportunities are available, and that is never ending. All right. So thank you so much for your patient listening. And if you have any questions, please post. I'm definitely open for discussion. Thanks a lot.